Here in the capital Taipei, at the center of Taiwan's National Day celebrations, the country's President Tsai Ing-wen is defining her legacy with her annual National Day speech.
What's special about this year's National Day show? Join us at the heart of the parade outside of the presidential office in downtown Taipei.
With the presidential election fast approaching, Taiwan's National Day celebrations reveal deep political divides.
Plus, an indigenous community declares its autonomy with its own flag and celebration ahead of Taiwan's National Day.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. It is National Day here in Taiwan. Celebrations in the capital Taipei were once again capped with a speech from President Tsai Ing-wen. And with her 2 terms as the country's president coming to an end, this was one of her final chances to lay out her vision for the country. Rick Gloward reports.
In the center of Taipei, cultural performers and the armed forces put on a vibrant display of what it means to be Taiwanese, as the country's people celebrate their National Day.
这是一种精神象征吧。我觉得现在的人不是只需要钱，在精神上也是要提升的，所以这个可以凝聚人民的力量。
Crowds in front of the presidential office are joined by national leaders and foreign dignitaries to take in the dancers, marching bands and Air Force flyovers. The pomp and pageantry on display here in the capital Taipei are a celebration of Taiwan's unique culture and a chance to show off its armed forces. But this National Day is also an opportunity for the President Tsai Ing-wen to define her legacy as she winds down 8 years as the country's leader. Tsai's time in office has been defined by her country's fraught relationship with neighbouring China, which claims Taiwan as part of its sovereign territory and has up threats to take by force. In her final National Day address, she touted the measures she has taken to bolster national defence, from boosting military spending to launching the country's first domestically produced military submarine.
不挑衅，不冒进，在压力下也不屈服，和全球民主国家深化合作。 共同维护区域和平稳定，也为世界贡献良善的力量。
But Tsai also extended an olive branch to Beijing.
同时，寻求两岸之间可以和平共处，人民之间可以自由而无拘束、无负担的往来，让台湾甚至两岸都能成为区域和平稳定的贡献者。
Tsai used her address to spotlight her administration's accomplishments during her time in office: same-sex marriage, economic growth, and energy security. Taiwan's 2-term limit means Tsai cannot run in January's presidential election, but the candidate for her party, the Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP, is leading the polls.
Yeah, I think she is trying to portray the DPP as a responsible steward of Taiwan in the sense of, for example, military preparedness, but also economic growth and so forth, and also touting a kind of progressive social vision that the DP has managed to enact.
For 8 years on National Day, President Tsai Ing-wen has stood in front of the country and shared her vision for Taiwan, often in defiance of Beijing. And with her final address, she's laid out a blueprint for her successor to follow, stressing Taiwan's sovereignty and a desire for peace across the strait. Joseph Wu and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
A major part of the National Day is the parade, which takes place through Taipei. Joy Sung was at the presidential office to see how the annual show has evolved over time.
A giant flag of the Republic of China, Taiwan's official name, flying in the skies above downtown Taipei. It's on display for National Day, one of the country's biggest public holidays. Millions of people are set to tune in, with many showing up outside the presidential office to get a look at the massive parade and share their love for their home country.
突然觉得有点感动。对，刚刚升旗的时候。
台湾就是一个很想自由的民主啊。
希望更多人能够认同台湾。
The parade is an annual event that dates back decades, marking the day an uprising in the early 1900s that ended China's last imperial dynasty. The main event has traditionally centered around showcasing defense capabilities, with troops, aircraft, and other hardware on display for the public to see.
Before the year 2000 and even before 1996, National Day performance used to be very solemn with significant authoritarian tone.
As Taiwan transitioned into a democracy, that tone has shifted. Now the occasion has become a more celebratory one, with local school marching bands taking part. This year's festivities even featured performances from Japan and, for the first time ever, from the US. But the military elements have never really left, especially given Taiwan's tense relationship with China, which claims the country as its own and has threatened to take it by force. As such, the parade has evolved to also serve as a signal to Beijing.
Behind me is the Army's Special Forces Command combat troop. Now they're some of the nation's strongest soldiers and would be one of the first called up to defend the country.
By showing up at one of the most watched televised shows in the country, the military is trying to assure the public that they have what it takes to protect its borders. And with international media outlets here, that message is also being sent overseas. It's a chance to show friendly nations like the US that the island nation is taking its defense seriously. But some analysts say that a parade might not be the best platform to do this.
You know, a lot of the ones that make for flashy kind of pictures, right? Tanks, aircraft, big missiles, actually are the ones that the U.S. are not interested in Taiwan, kind of displaying. They really want Taiwan to go more asymmetric. Stuff that doesn't really look good on a newspaper photo.
To become fully asymmetric and have less reliance on conventional weapons, analysts say the country still has some way to go. But as far as the parade goes in bolstering public confidence, at least for those here at the presidential office, it's all about fostering good spirits and strong faith in their home nation. Alex Chen and Joyce Zin for TaiwanPlus.
Away from the National Day ceremony in Taipei, Taiwan's most powerful opposition figures held a rival celebration in protest at the official parade's English name. Stash Butler reports.
Taiwan's former President Ma Ying-jeou shatters a decades-long custom, celebrating the country's National Day, but not at the government-held event. Instead, he's in New Taipei, a city controlled by his party, the Kuomintang. Because on what's meant to be a day of national unity, the very name of the country has become the focus of a fierce political debate.
从前年开始，蔡英文政府将双十国庆日的英文名称改成 Taiwan National Day， 中文就是台湾的国庆日。台湾是我们的家园，没有问题。但是中华民国才是我们国家名称，对不对？对。
Taiwan is officially called the Republic of China, a result of the fallout of the Chinese Civil War, when the leadership of the nationalist forces, the Kuomintang, fled to Taiwan and set up their government in Taipei. Ma, a member of that same party, says President Tsai Ing-wen's embrace of the name Taiwan violates the constitution, pushing Taiwanese nationalism and undermining a large part of the population's Chinese heritage.
Local city-level celebrations like this are happening all over Taiwan, but for the most powerful politicians in the country, like Ma, there's only one national-level celebration, and that's about 10 kilometers that way, in the capital, Taipei.
To skip the national event is a powerful signal of dissent, coming just 3 months before Taiwan votes in a pivotal presidential election. Ma and his party hope to leverage the moment against the Tsai administration to support their candidate and promote a stronger Chinese identity among the public. But how effective the move will be is less than clear.
It's not really an electorally successful strategy. It doesn't really resonate with a lot of voters, especially when we know that a lot of the sort of I'm Chinese narratives don't really reflect what we know the population of Taiwan identifies as. There's only a small minority of people in Taiwan that identify as Chinese exclusively.
In the capital, Taipei, President Tsai is heading National Day celebrations for the last time as her 2 terms come to an end. While over the river in the country's most populous city, a former president and other opposition figures hold their own commemoration, hoping next year's official parade takes place with their party back in power. Justin Ornstash Butler in New Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
China has extended its investigation into trade barriers until the day before Taiwan's elections. The inspections have been ongoing since April this year after President Tsai Ing-wen met with then U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a move China strongly opposed. The checks will continue until January 12th, the day before Taiwan's presidential election. Taiwan's economy relies heavily on the Chinese market, but China banned the import of some Taiwanese goods earlier this year. Experts say economic cooperation across the Taiwan Strait will depend on the results of the election.
就是想要凸显说，两岸有政治互信，大陆就可以让利；两岸没有政治互信，那大陆方面就不仅将本求利，而且会采取必要的反制措施。选1月12号以前，他会视台湾选举情况再来公布。
U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the United States and China are at a historic decision point. Schumer is leading a bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation to China, the first of its kind since 2019. The group met with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Monday to discuss opportunities for economic cooperation. Schumer says this is key to the future of U.S.-China relations.
We made clear to President Xi that America wants fairness and stability. At the foundation of the relationship must be a level playing field for American businesses and workers, as well as responsible competition.
Police in Peru have rescued 44 victims of a suspected Taiwanese-led human trafficking ring. Officials say the victims, 43 from Malaysia and 1 from Taiwan, were lured to the Peruvian capital Lima with fake online job offers. Once there, they say they were forced to pose as police and make blackmail calls to companies in Malaysia and Taiwan demanding money. Police raided their location after 2 women escaped the gang and raised the alarm. 6 people from Taiwan and 2 Peruvians have been arrested. A history buff in Taichung is using military costume to teach people about the past. And as people in Taiwan polish their brass and dress to the nines for Double 10 Day, he's hoping his work attracts people cut from the same cloth. Bryn Thomas has the story.
Wu Shangrang is someone who wears 2 hats. He's an author and a filmmaker from Taichung. And he's one of the first people in the Chinese-speaking world to teach history through military costume and reenactment.
其实我在小时候我就对军服就产生兴趣了。其实产生兴趣的原因很简单嘛，就是受到美国好莱坞的电影啊，还有一些电脑游戏，就有受到影响了。小男生的梦想，然后长大之后呢，误打误撞变成自己的工作跟事业。为什么我会想要出书？其实跟这些东西都非常的有关联。
Like a lot of historical reenactors, Wu was originally interested in Western military costume, but that began to change after he completed his 1-year enlistment in Taiwan's military.
在退伍之后就觉得，国军历史是非常的，是有关于我们台湾人，或者说或者大陆人。
Both Taiwan and China's militaries grew out of a National Revolutionary Army. Known as the NRA, it later became the first official force of the Republic of China, or ROC, a state founded by Chinese revolutionary Dr. Sun Yat-sen. But shortly after his death, the NRA was consolidated under anti-communist leader Chiang Kai-shek. It's that force that would later form the basis of both China and Taiwan's current militaries, the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, of the Chinese Communist Party, and the nationalist ROC armed forces now based in Taiwan. During the following wars, both had to get uniforms wherever they could. German Wehrmacht helmets were mixed with American rifles and Soviet-style tunics. After the Chinese Civil War, the armies grew in different directions and began using items from respective sides of the Cold War. The result was a broad hodgepodge of different uniforms, each with its own history. The variety led Wu to publish a book on the subject in 2018. 100 years of the Chinese military uniform spans the 20th century.
除了写中华民国跟中共之外呢，假如有关于中国的，我通通一起收录进去。可是写到后面发现，因为写中国题材，你写到抗战，你总不能不写日本吧？那写到冷战，冷战会碰到什么？美军啊、苏联军啊，甚至说北韩军、南韩军、越南军，这些周围的国家都会接触到。
Wu went on to write 3 books on this subject, and he's even become an advisor to filmmakers covering the topic.
有一个电影最近才刚上映，他们的军服其实都是他们的剧组里面的一些人来问我，里面所有的国军的制服嘛，他们问我，怎么穿？那时候是穿什么？那装备用什么？他们都不知道嘛，因为他们网上一查，他们那时候去查了一个像宪兵的资料，他拿照片跟我看说，拍民国40年代，可不可以穿这个宪兵衣服？我一看，这是民国70年代的宪兵。
Be it the police or the Marines, Taiwan's modern military uniforms are on full display during the National Day Parade. For Wu Xiangrong, it's all part of an evolving and complicated history. Patrick Chen, Rick Yi, Sam Hui, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Israel is warning its counterattack on Hamas has only just begun as retaliatory airstrikes bombard the Gaza Strip. But the militant group is threatening to broadcast the killing of one hostage for each Israeli airstrike delivered without warning. At least 1,100 people have been killed by Hamas in Israel, while more than 690 Palestinians have died from Israeli strikes. Rosie Greninger reports.
The Gaza Strip pounded with unrelenting airstrikes from Israel. Parts of the enclave reduced to rubble as the Israel military strikes back at Hamas with a force like, quote, never seen before.
But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come.
It's in retaliation to a surprise attack by Hamas 3 days ago, on the last day of the Jewish festival of Sukkot. Hamas, the militant group that runs Gaza, wants to establish an Islamic Palestinian state in the place of Israel. They attacked Israel on multiple fronts, launching missiles that killed hundreds, breaking across the border and rampaging through Israeli streets, abducting over 100 hostages. This footage shows a frenzied assault at a music festival. Hamas militants firing shots at anyone trying to escape, killing over 260 people and abducting many others. In a recording released by Hamas' arm wing, the group warns Israel they will broadcast the murder of one hostage for every airstrike launched on Gaza without warning. Relatives of those hostages are speaking out, including this woman pleading for the safety of her kidnapped 85-year-old grandmother.
There's no reason in the world that elderly and women and kids and babies get kidnapped. There's no reason, and bring them back home. Whatever you do, just bring them back home.
But Israel has pushed forward with its counterattack. The defense minister ordering a complete siege of Gaza, cutting off food, electricity, fuel and water supplies to the enclave's 2.3 million people, whose movements and resources have already been limited by a blockade from Israel since 2007, when Hamas took control of the Strip.
They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
Palestine's prime minister, who controls the West Bank but has no power in Gaza, weighed in, blaming the attack on Israel.
هذه الأحداث وما يترتب عليها هي نتاج سياسة الحكومة الإسرائيلية التي تمارس أبشع صنوف العدوان والقتل ومصادرة الأراضي والاعتداءات على المقدسات وما يرافقها من إرهاب المستوطنين وممارستهم البشعة.
It's an incredibly delicate situation, now sending ripples across the globe, with the United Nations worried about the humanitarian needs on both sides.
Let me begin by repeating my utter condemnation of the abhorrent attacks by Hamas and others against Israeli towns and villages in the Gaza. While I recognize Israel's legitimate security concerns, I also remind Israel that military operations must be conducted in strict accordance with international humanitarian law.
At the airport in Tel Aviv, thousands attempted to flee as nations send in repatriation flights. The US is sending military support, with President Joe Biden saying he will give Israel what it needs to defend itself. But the international community is divided. While Western governments are standing with Israel, there are those who sympathise with the Palestinian cause. As attacks enter their fourth day, there is no indication of let-up. And in this long-running conflict, it's the civilians on both sides who will continue paying the heaviest toll. Scott Huang and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is shooting for the stars when it comes to space travel, and part of its efforts include the development of recyclable rockets. Reese Ayers has the story.
Cries of joy and relief at the Advanced Rocket Research Center as Taiwan's domestically made space rocket sails 3,000 meters into the sky. These are scenes from a launch in July 2022, with the successful test of the country's newest autonomous rocket.
I believe that this rocket is the first rocket in Taiwan which has its own thrust vector control and its own throttle control, which enables it to control its altitude and its flight path to achieve our mission goal.
Over a year on, researchers are ready for the next phase of their project, which will combine two sections of the hybrid rocket. The next launch, planned for later this year, hopes to make significant gains on the previous test.
目标就是在今年呢，我们可以持续去发射这支双节的探空火箭，来尝试去飞到100公里以上的高空。
The team are testing sounding rockets, designed to carry instruments and satellites into Earth's orbit. It's all part of Taiwan's efforts to become a contender in the international space race. While the country may already be a world leader in a number of technologies, such as the production of semiconductors, it's yet to make a big impact in the field of space research. But rocket scientists here have much more in the pipeline. The smaller HTTP-4, currently in development, is designed for reuse and could be among the world's first fully recyclable rockets.
垂直起飞后，飞了水平100公尺跟高度100公尺之后，在异地去做降落，那我们就是用这个雏形来验证这样子的导引导控的技术。
There are plans to launch 6 low-orbit satellites by 2028, but the scheme is currently behind schedule. Earlier this year, the National Science and Technology Council proposed a 3-year extension to allow the domestic space industry more development time. Taiwan has a long way to go if it's to compete with other countries in space, but these scientists are doing their part to get Taiwanese hopes off the ground and its satellites into the skies. Andy Xue and Reese Ayers for TaiwanPlus.
As Taiwan celebrates its National Day, a different flag is flying in a small town in the country's east. It represents the Amis Music Festival, an event highlighting Taiwanese indigenous culture. Yu Jinghuang has more.
Dancers from several indigenous groups perform together to show solidarity between peoples across Taiwan. And with that, the Amis Music Festival begins. The decade-old festival began by celebrating the music and culture of the indigenous Amis Adoran community, but has grown over the years. Not just Amis people, but other indigenous groups also put on their traditional garb to join the event. The festival is normally held in November, but it was pushed forward this year to avoid a northeastern monsoon. Held right before Taiwan's National Day, the organizers say people like the coexistence.
跟部落有一个幽默跟自嘲，就说，在中华民国来之前，我们已经有自己的国啦，所以就好像要比国庆日再早一点点这样。
The Amis Music Festival sits on Adoran's sacred land, Pacifilan, which lies in between mountains and sea in the eastern county of Taidong.
For years, the indigenous Amis Adoran tribe has objected to a plan to build tourist accommodation on this land. They declared this area as part of their traditional territory in 2017 and say they're determined to safeguard their autonomy.
During the festival, the flag of the Adora Nation can be seen all over the town. The performances are mostly by indigenous people, and vendors are limited to selling indigenous-themed products. To the Adoran, the festival lays the foundation for the autonomy they hope for.
革命带来什么？带来一个就是文化的传承，跟每一个部落的一个团结、一个结合。另外一个是这边的民宿或是商圈的地方，都带来一个不一样的气息。
The festival has also become an important space for the Adoran community to preserve their culture. This dance is about an Amis community upbringing. Amis people have an age hierarchy system for public affairs. Older people lead the young, and at the festival, young girls are given the task of performing a dance. A young leader says it's a way to help the younger generation feel better about living in remote areas.
可能有时候他们会被一些外来的负面的话，然后去很在意。但是我觉得他们如果可以更有自信，就是站出来说，哦，我就是都兰部落的，那我觉得他们会很骄傲，然后也会很有自信的说出自己是都兰的人。
Having suffered generations of injustice by ruling parties, Taiwan's indigenous people are working to regain representation of themselves. And at the Amis Music Festival, they are showing not just their music and culture, but also the independence they desire. Kamashi, Simonetta Ho, and Eugene Huang for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we leave you with images of the UCLA Bruin Marching Band in the National Day celebrations in Taipei. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.